If you are editing these 3D viral reels, you are probably doing it wrong. That's why I'm here, because in this video I will be recreating that complex animation you can see on the screen right now, taken directly from one of 0x100x most popular video. So with that being said, let's dive in. Hey guys, so let's start from making first composition as always. Let's name it first part because actually our animation is going to have two parts. Let's go with TikTok resolution, frame rate on 30 and duration on 10 seconds. Let's click OK. Let's start from making main object is going to be like distorted rectangle. So let's go to tools, go to pen tool, and let's create that object. Okay, let's start creating that. It should looks like this. Okay, I'm going to adjust that object a little. You guys should aim to something like that. Okay, perfect. Now let's add here one effect. It is going to be, of course, roughen edges. Thanks that effect, we are going to make actually just roughen edges. Okay, let's now change some setting here. Let's change border to 40, edgy sharpness to 10, and of course fractal influence to 0. We are not going to need any fractals here. Okay, it should looks like this. Now let's pre-compose that. So right click on this layer, pre-compose. Let's name that main object, and now let's create mask for this object. Okay, I will zoom out this by a little, and let's click on our pre-compose, click on rectangle tool, and let's create this type of mask. Okay, exactly like this. Now go to mask 1, go to add, change that to subtract, of course, and mask feather to 700. We should get something like this. Okay, so our main object is 100% done. Now let's add a grid that you was able to find like here, like behind our main object. So let's create that grid. It's going to be pretty simple. Let's create new solid, name that grid, and let's add grid effect to that solid. Okay, let's change border to 0.3. So by that our grid just became like thinner. Let's change here corner settings to get like perfect rectangles. Let's make them a little smaller. Okay, to something like this. Now let's pre-compose this, of course. Let's name that just grid. Let's put that grid below our main object, and let's add here mask as well. So go here to rectangle tool, and now by selecting area on screen we are going to create our mask. Our mask should be something like that. Now go to settings for that mask. This time let's leave add here, and mask feather to 150. Okay, our grid is done. Okay, now let's create another rectangle that you were able to find exactly here. It's going to be very simple object, just a rectangle that should looks like this. Let's move that a little higher, somewhere there. Now let's go to rectangle one here, rectangle path, and here we can add roundness to this rectangle. Let's set that to 25. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to size. Let's unlink our size, and let's adjust this size a bit to something like this. So this rectangle is going to cover all elements behind this. Now let's also go to layer styles, and let's create really intensive drop shadow for this object. So let's create drop shadow. Don't change any settings, actually just opacity we can go with 100. Okay, that is perfect. Okay, I prepared for you guys this image that we need to add like here, because this person is going to look on the graph that is going to be like here. That is the idea behind this guy. So just wanted to let you know, guys, why we are going to add him here. So of course let's upload him. Let's change scale to 20, and let's put him somewhere here. Let's adjust size to maybe 17. Let's put him exactly there. Now let's put one small element that you can see here on animation. We are going to do it by adding one shape, something like this. Okay, let's add on this gradient effect. Let's change position our points to these places. So point for black color exactly here, point for white color exactly here. Okay, now one little thing more. Let's go to consents, rectangle 1, rectangle path, and change roundness to like 10. Okay, now we can decompose that. Let's name this mini element and let's create mask for this mini element like this. Let's go to mask, go here, change this to subtract and mask feather to like 50 probably. Okay, perfect, it's fine. Okay, now let's create our graph. Simply change tools to pen tool. And now let's go to fill, click on none and go to stroke. Let's set that to white for now. Let's go here and pixels to 2, so it's going to be thin, and let's just paint that by using pen tool. Okay, it should look like this. Okay, now let's create for our graph like shiny ellipse that is going with our graph. As you saw on animation and start of the video, it's very important element of this animation, so we have to create that, and for this we are going to use optical flare effect. To use that effect we have to create black solid, same as for example for element 3D effect or for grid effect. Let's name that shiny ball for example, and let's add here optical flares. Okay, now let's go to options and delay everything from here apart of this glow. Okay, perfect. After deleting everything, let's click OK. Now let's go to positioning mode to 3D. Okay, it will be helpful in the next parts of our tutorial. Now let's go to render mode and go from on black to on transparent, of course. Okay, perfect. Let's change brightness to 60. Okay, and just for now we are going to move this here. Okay, now let's add here our text, where at the animating part we are going to make counter animation. For now let's just add here new text. Let's go with monster rat medium. Let's make this text smaller. For now let's just put here $0. Let's make this text white. It should be a little bigger too, and let's move this text right there. Now let's add here like one little stroke that is here on the animation. Let's put here like 17 pixels for the stroke, or maybe 15. Now let's go to constants, go to stroke, and here in line cap let's change that to round cap from bad cap. So just thanks that we got round caps for this stroke. Okay, perfect. Now last element is going to be text, my account text, which we have to put in this place. So create new text, my account. Okay, perfect. And let's make this text really small. It should be something like this. And we are going to put this text just a little above text with number of money. Okay, perfect. And our designing is finished. Our compositions looks like this. In my opinion, it looks really good. Now, of course, we have to go to animating. Okay, so let's start from animating colors. Actually, for design part, we also need to add gradient for this shape. So I'm going to do this right now. Let's go to this shape. Let's add here gradient ramp effect. Okay, with first point for black let's go to somewhere there, and with point for white to like here. Now let's change black color to green, like this type of green. Okay, and now let's go to start color. Let's create keyframe for this, and then go a little above 2-second mark, and let's change this start color to red. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to our main object, and let's add here fill effects. Let's create first keyframe at start. Let's put this color at start to white. Then let's create second keyframe exactly where we created second keyframe for first object, which was animating. So it's going to be here, and on this second keyframe let's change color to red. Okay, perfect. Let's back to our main composition. Okay, now let's go to this object, mini object, and actually firstly maybe add here fill effect and change color to maybe this type of gray instead of white. Let's create first keyframe for color at start, and second this mark, and now let's change this color to red. We can copy this fill and paste this to our my account text. Okay, so it's going to be animated exactly same. Okay, now let's go to our optical flare, and here we have color settings. So create first keyframe at start as always, and put this color to green, and second keyframe at our marked place on timeline, and here let's change color to of course red. Okay, perfect. And by that we are done with color animation on this first part of our animation. Now let's animate our graph, and of course let's create our counting animation. So maybe we will start from counting animation. So let's click on this text with our number. Let's go to effects and presets, and let's apply here numbers plus script from Creative Dojo. It's free to get. Actually, you can find tutorial on my channel on how to create number counting animation, so you can check that as well. So let's apply this script on our text. Okay, perfect. Now let's change precision to 0, and now go to auto animation, go to increment, and let's click here to enable this auto animation. We'll create animation by ourselves, so let's disable that. And now first keyframe at start, second of this marked price. Okay, at first keyframe let's put here 56,000, and on second keyframe of course 0. Now let's go to prefix and change that to USD. Now let's go to paragraph and change this paragraph to this option. Now let's move this text. Okay, thanks that our counting animation is completed. Now let's animate our graph. So first let's go to our shape layer for graph, and let's go here, click on add, and let's create trim path here, so we'll be able to animate our stroke thanks this. Okay, so create first keyframe here, and on our marked place second keyframe, and on first keyframe let's put end to 0. Okay, by the way, let's also add color animation to our graph as well. So let's add here fill effect, first color keyframe at start, second. Okay, second keyframe, it can be on this red, first keyframe on this simple yellow. Okay, our graph is done by that. Now let's keyframe our optical flare, that it will be going along with our graph. So our optical flare is going to be like at start of our graph, and it's going to go like that with our graph. Okay, so let's keyframe this optical flare. Let's go to black solid with optical flare, and here you can find setting for position. Let's create first keyframe at start. Okay, and now every few frames, let's adjust our position of this optical flare. Let's just keep adjusting that after a few seconds. Okay, just like that. There are different ways to do that, but it's going to be the fastest one right now, and it's the easiest one, of course. Okay, as you can see, it's done. Okay, our last thing for animation is going to be to create some camera movements for this. So of course we have to start from making all elements 3D. Okay, so just do it like me right now. And now let's create new camera. Okay, perfect. Now let's add null to this camera. Okay, and we are going to start from creating shaking effect for camera. This effect is insanely easy to do and also very nice looking. So let's create this. Let's go to transform, let's go to position. Now let's alt and click on this keyframe. Thanks that we can add script for our position. And let's just write figure and let's write 1.10, and in this script our first number is like frequency of this shaking effect and 10 is like volume of this effect. It should look like that. It will be not very strong movement, but you can easily see that. So yeah, it's very easy and very nice looking. So I really recommend to use this effect pretty often in your animations because it's going to add more movement, which always is good for your animation. Like movement in animations never should stop, trust me. Okay, now let's link another null to this null and let's create like first movement. So it's going to be like awesome animation, pretty easy stuff. Start from like here and go to something like this, and let's go to graph and let's create speed graph that should look like this. Really simple speed graph. Okay, it should be something like this. Perfect. Now last camera movement. Let's of course link another null to this second null. So we have third null. Okay, this time let's go to our marked place on timeline and let's create first position keyframe here, second one on like 1 second. Okay, now go to actually second keyframe right now and let's change this position down. Okay, as you can see our optical flare glitched a little. That's because actually our solid on which is optical flares effect shouldn't be 3D. It already is working with camera. So let's unclick here. Okay, it's in right place again. Okay, at first keyframe, let's actually center our entire animation on screen. Okay, so to like this position, second keyframe a bit down. Okay, and go to graph and let's create graph like this. Okay, now for final touches part, actually we're just going to create one adjustment layer and add here trip glow. Let's don't change radius, exposure on 0.01. So we just want to add a little more glow, but nothing crazy. Okay, first part is completed. Let's select all elements on timeline and let's pre-compose that. Let's name that pre-compose first part. Okay, and let's cut this pre-compose exactly at place where our all second keyframes were. So it's going to be here. Let's cut that. Okay, and now let's watch how our first part of animation is looking after our hard work. Okay, as you can see, it looks very good. Now let's create second part of animation that is going to be a lot of easier. So let's do it. Okay, so let's create new pre-compose. Let's name that second part. Okay, let's move this to our main composition. Okay, and let's move this pre-compose to the place where first part is ending. Okay, now let's go to this second part composition. Okay, of course we are going to start from creating our person icon. We are going to do it by making shapes in After Effects. So let's start from creating ellipse. Let's go to fill, let's put fill and stroke to 0 pixels, and let's create ellipse like this. We can center that on screen by using Alkin tool. Let's click on Alkin horizontally and on Alkin vertically. Now let's right click on this shape layer. Now let's go to layer styles and let's go with gradient overlay. Okay, and in our settings let's change reverse to on and offset to -55. Okay, perfect. Now let's create another ellipse that we are going to use as our mask for this. Let's show you something like that. And now let's go to track mate and let's link second layer to first layer. Okay, now let's click here to invert the mate. Okay, now let's go to first layer and let's add here fastbox blur effect. Let's put that on 45. Also, let's change this ellipse to this format and place that somewhere like here. Okay, so I think that this down part of our person icon is done. Now let's create head for this icon, but first let's pre-compose that. Okay, now let's create another ellipse. Of course, go here. We can allocate that horizontally. Okay, now again let's go to layer styles and let's apply here gradient overlay. Okay, go to gradient overlay, let's change style to radial, let's change reverse to on. Okay, now scale to 135, angle to 45. Now let's go to colors, go to edit gradient, and let's move this mark somewhere there. Okay, our head is ready. Let's start creating our face for this person. Let's start from making eyes. So create another ellipse, but this time really small ellipses. Now above our eyes, let's create eyelids. Let's creating them by using 1.5 pixels. Okay, first eyelid, now second eyelid. Okay, perfect. Now let's create our mouth somewhere there, of course. And now go to fill. Let's go with known option. Okay, perfect. Our icon is ready. Okay, now to control all our elements that are creating our icon in one time, let's select all these shape layers and one pre-compose where is our first ellipse. And let's link them all to one null. Okay, now by changing null position, let's center this icon. Let's make it a little bigger, something like this. Now let's add text here. Going to be they misunderstand one thing. Okay, let's use monster red medium. Let's move second line of our text a little down, okay, like this. Now let's place this text there. Okay, now let's create animation for this text, and for this animation we need to use text evo effect. So let's apply here text evo. Okay, here add text evo, and also go here and change this to words. So basically our animation will be based on words, not letters. Okay, perfect. Now go to delay, let's set that to 2, and let's go to transform, opacity to 0, position to 55. Okay, now let's go to keyframe for this animation. Let's go to value graph and let's make this a little sharpen. Okay, it's ready. Now let's add here camera movement. So of course, to make camera movement we need to make all elements here 3D layers. So let's create them as 3D layers. Now let's create new camera. Immediately link new null to this camera. And let's create our first camera movement. Let's create first keyframe start, second, like in 1 second and half. Okay, let's go to first keyframe and let's change position to something like that. Let's go to graph and let's change speed graph to this type of graph. Okay, it looks like that. Perfect. Now let's create out animation for our text. It's just going to be smooth position change a little up, and along with that we are going to change opacity from 100, so like now, to 0. So let's do it. Let's create first keyframe for position on 1 second and second keyframe somewhere here. Okay, now let's change position to somewhere there. Go to graph and let's create graph like this. Now let's create first keyframe for opacity this time at same place as first keyframe for position, and second keyframe for opacity like here, and on second keyframe let's put here 0. Okay, it looks really smooth. Okay, our last elements for second part of animation are going to be like 5 balls here with different colors and pretty huge deep glow. So let's create them. Okay, we are going to create them by using pen tool with 2.5 pixels. Okay, let's create first ball. So just make random strokes like that. Okay, perfect. Let's duplicate this, move this on the right, and randomly change these strokes like that. Okay, copy that again, move that on the right, again randomly change strokes, duplicate again, move on the right, again randomly change strokes. Okay, duplicate last time, move on the right, also randomly change strokes. Let's adjust positions of all balls. Okay, perfect. Now let's change colors. Let's add fill effect on first ball. Let's change color to like pink. Okay, let's add this effect on second ball. Let's change that to blue. Let's add again to yellow this time, again to white this time, and last one should be in a red color. Okay, perfect. Now let's add in animation for all these balls. Also, let's make all balls 3D layers. Okay, just in case. Okay, and now first keyframe for positions will be somewhere there, second somewhere there. Now let's change position on first keyframe to something like this. Let's change graph to something like that. Okay, now let's also create here opacity keyframe. Okay, second opacity keyframe like here, and let's go to first opacity keyframe and let's change opacity to 0% at start. Okay, it should look like that. Now let's copy all these settings. Let's go 2 keyframes ahead and let's copy these keyframes on second ball. Okay, now just adjust position like this. Okay, copy this to third ball. Let's go 2 keyframes ahead also. Okay, let's adjust position. Okay, copy again, 2 keyframes ahead, copy, adjust position. Okay, and last time copy, 2 seconds ahead, past, and adjust position. Okay, perfect. Let's look how it looks right now. Okay, it looks perfect. Okay, now let's also add turbulent displace effect on our balls. So let's go to first ball. Let's go with turbulent displace effect. Perfect. Now let's go to the first second. Let's click evolution and let's make first keyframe of evolution here. Second keyframe at the end of our timeline, and let's put evolution on 2 right there. Okay, now let's change amount of turbulent to 25 and size to like 110. Okay, perfect. It's exactly how this effect is working. Now let's copy this effect and let's apply it to the rest of balls. Okay, it looks perfect. And the last thing here is going to add deep glow on our balls. So let's create deep glow. Radius, let's leave with that amount, so 500, and exposure, let's decrease to 0.2. Okay, let's copy that deep glow with these settings and let's pass that to rest of balls. Okay, exactly like that. And right now let's add the last camera movement. So of course let's go to the first null for camera and let's link another null to this null. Click add null here. Okay, first keyframe should be like here, second like, and let's change position of second keyframe to something like that. So just zoom our camera. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to graph editor and let's create graph like that. As you can see in this video, we have insanely easy graphs. Okay, and with that, our second and also last part of this animation is completed. Let's check how it looks like. Okay, and as you can see, it looks very clean. Now let's check how it looks like with first part of animation. Okay, and now you can see on screen our two parts of animations together, and it's creating really nice and very cool looking composition together. Okay, I'm not going to take you more time. It's end of this tutorial. I hope that you liked that. And of course, if you like that tutorial, you can just leave like and of course subscribe that channel. It will help me a lot. Okay, with that we can just end that tutorial. Bye guys.